what used to be the dark web was, all Tor related stuff. You know what I mean? Like everything was on Tor, hidden websites, and all this stuff. Now
No,
the dark web
isn't that
just
the
means.
deep web?
Eh.
I don't know what the difference is.
Anyway, now it's just whatever. You go to Black Hat World, and most of that stuff is there.
Oh yeah. I know that one means that it's not indexed, and the other means it's on Tor. I can't remember which is which. I've got a hard stop at 9.
All right. Well, we are live. And we're thanks for joining us, everyone. Everything looking good on this side, and we might as well let me just get that website in front of me here. Welcome back to Silicon Scoop, and with me as always my co-host John Irwin. John, we have this massive data breach going on right now. We're talking about over 47 gig of sensitive user data was discovered in an unprotected database. We're talking about massive identity theft opportunities, including information from Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Instagram, Snapchat, Roblox, Discord, Netflix, PayPal, and over 220 government emails were affected across 8 countries. What's happening here?
Yeah, so this is crazy. Now, like you said, tons of different platforms, but the breach wasn't due to a hack, so to say, like as far as like a SQL injection or something like that. It wasn't due to a hack of the companies themselves, but rather the result of cyber criminals using malware to steal credentials from people's devices and then storing them in an unsecured online database. So the database that we're talking about, it was left unprotected and unencrypted, and it made it easy for anyone who found it to access the sensitive information. So right now, just if you guys have Apple, Google, Facebook, I think, what were they? Instagram, Facebook, there's a bunch of them.
PayPal.
You know what? Just change your passwords. So
Google, Microsoft, Snapchat.
Snapchat,
Discord,
financial institutions,
Netflix,
healthcare portals, and like you said, government accounts across 29 countries. This is, I don't know why this isn't bigger news, because this is massive. Have you seen this in the news at all, Craig? Because I haven't.
I've seen it in a couple of places, but they were just short stories. I haven't seen anybody really covering it in any way. I think the reason why they're not is all these companies are generally advertisers.
True. Yeah, that's probably it. But even
the guy that I follow, but you look at Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Instagram, Netflix, PayPal, these are all advertisers. So you're going to say, do we really want to talk about what exposure they have, even though, it wasn't necessarily a hack, as you said?
Yeah. Yeah, even the guy that the effing news, that guy, I didn't see him cover it, nor did I see News Daddy cover it. So this was interesting. So the source was traced to this thing called InfoStealer malware, which is a type of malicious software that silently collects login information, cookies, autofill data, even screenshots from the infected devices. And it's spread through phishing emails or downloading malicious files, different things like that. And once it's installed, it can harvest credentials for a wide variety of services. So, this is absolutely nuts. Largest breach I've ever seen or heard of as far as the amount of companies and the amount of data that's been stolen. But after it was reported, so the data was probably intended for sale or use on the dark web. But after Fowler, the guy who reported this, he reported the discovery of the database. It was taken offline. So who knows how long it was accessible? Obviously, it was accessible. People did download it. And something's going to happen with the data at some point. We just don't know when, right?
Yep. So, and, it's a question of who they're going after, right? You're on 184 million. Usually people are... if you're a hacker or you have this database and you're going to use it, you're using it for a purpose. You're using it to sell something, you're using it to steal something, you're using it. So not everybody will be a target, but that doesn't mean you will, you're not vulnerable. So the high value targets will probably be hit first, rather than, and then the low value targets hit later with the credit card type scams and that types of things, versus the big government type stuff where there's actual data worth farming.
Yeah, and the thing to note here, guys, is that this wasn't and I want to reiterate this wasn't a breach of any system at all. This was a phishing expedition of malware harvesting these credentials from people's personal devices. That's how they gathered all of this, which is even scarier because it only affects those people who had the malware, but it just goes to like 184 million records, unique login credentials. Now, obviously, that could be multiple for one person, but it's nuts that they got that many from just some malware. This is like a more sophisticated keylogger, right?
Yeah, basically, it's just running on the devices, the PCs, the Macs, the handheld units, or what have you, phones, and stealing the data at that level, not at the server level like you're suggesting. And it just gets out there into a massive database, and people either collect it and put it together, or it does it itself, and you end up with this database that people are using. So there are some best practices, and they say two-factor authentication still remains the best form of protection for most of this.
Yeah.
However, it's also the biggest pain. If you ever change your phone number and whatnot, a lot of times it's such a hassle.
I've had the same phone number since I was, I think, 11 years old.
Well, recently my business partner changed his phone number because we believed that the bank accounts were hacked. So we decided to change everything. And that was a huge pain. It turned out that wasn't the case. It was just one thing that was done wrong on the account perspective. But at the time, it was the smart thing. It seemed like the smart thing to do. So if you haven't already, take a look at activating two-factor authentication. Monitor your accounts, go and change your passwords. If you can, get probably a good password protector. There's a bunch of password manager. There's a bunch out there that are available. There's some open source ones, and there's some great Canadian companies like 1Password who offer a monthly subscription for a couple of bucks a month to do that for you. So maintain them, monitor your accounts, check your security settings. If you haven't updated your passwords in a couple of years, it's time.
Yeah. And honestly, here's the thing. If you hate two-factor authentication, if you really find it a nuisance, I would suggest at the bare minimum, put it on your bank accounts, anything related to money. Because at the end of the day, that's your livelihood. So at least enable it on there if you don't want to enable it anywhere else. But I would suggest everywhere.
Yeah, and this massive data breach serves as a critical wake-up call for all internet users worldwide. With the exposure of 184 million accounts, the plain text password demonstrates how vulnerable our digital lives can become when proper scrutiny measures aren't in place. So, take the steps we suggested, reset your password, add two-factor authentication. A lot of these suggestions are here on the article on TorontoStarts.com. They complex passwords and all that, but that doesn't help with a data breach like this. Unfortunately, it might help if they're weird characters and they don't translate well into JSON or whatever, something or somebody's trying to copy over. However, this type of thing, just be aware. Like, you need to be more and more aware. And now that with AI tools that are attached to security tools, that people can go through this stuff faster and faster than ever before. So protect yourself and let us know what you think. Is this going to be the future where everybody's information is made available and you're constantly vulnerable? Or are we going to see some quantum encryption stuff where this is going to stop? We'd love to hear your comments. Oops. So we've talked about this before briefly when hinting at other things, but now it's official. Bitcoin quantum risk, evaluating how quantum computing threatens Bitcoin and related investments. So this suggests that quantum computing technology can completely destroy the strong mathematical encryption that things like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies use, making them potentially useless overnight once this kicks in. What do you think about this, John?
Yeah, so I get it. I agree. But let me state that so BlackRock, they updated their iShares Bitcoin Trust prospectus where they flagged specifically quantum computing as a material risk to Bitcoin's long-term security. Now, that being said, that's with current technology and current encryption. And for those of you that don't know, they use cryptographic algorithms like SHA-256 and elliptic curve digital signature algorithm. So that being said, that doesn't mean that that we can't make changes to the blockchain. We can't make changes to Bitcoin. We can't make changes to any other cryptocurrency to protect it going forward. And there's some things that can be done, like you can do a soft fork update. You can add Schnorr and post-quantum hybrid. So like you can do a bunch of different things. So I get why they are issuing this now. It warns that advances in quantum computing, mathematics, and even digital technology could hack and break the current encryption, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So today's Bitcoin security risks are manageable because no quantum computer exists that's powerful enough to break Bitcoin's encryption. However, technological advantage or technology advances quickly, and the cryptocurrency quantum threat grows stronger each year as quantum computers become more powerful. The main concern is that Bitcoin security dependency on math problems take regular computers thousands of years to solve, but quantum computers might solve them in hours or days or minutes. This creates a race between quantum computing and development and Bitcoin ability to upgrade its security systems.
Yeah. So just so you guys know, before you start getting your pitchforks and all that out, they estimate that practical, and we talked about this, practical quantum computers that are capable of breaking the cryptography are still, I would say, 10 to 20 years away. So that being said, there's plenty of time for them to plug the holes, or at least try to, because there's no way to test whether or not it's quantum resilient until we have a quantum computer that can actually, that you can test it against, right?
Yeah.
So, like, just so you guys know, the Bitcoin community is already researching and testing quantum safe protocols. But as we all know, or as you may not know, it's difficult to implement changes across the entire network because of the way that blockchain, the technology itself, is as a technology, right? So, what do you think, Craig?
Well, you can change it if you have consensus, but it's a lot of work. I think it's going to be interesting to see if these technologies survive. What we talked about,
survive?
if blockchain cryptography survive longer term, if we we'll probably have to switch to a different type of cryptography than what we're currently using. So that's what I mean by will it survive? Because I think we'll have to use some form of quantum cryptography, that is quantum proof, that is something different than would have been dreamed up before quantum computers existed. So will that be a new form, proof of work and proof of state and proof of this? Will that easily be forged with quantum computers now? So we have to choose some other, say, proof.
Yeah, and there's some novel approaches to this. Like you can do a hash-based time lock address where you would create an address that becomes quantum vulnerable only after a specified time delay. So that would allow legitimate users to move funds before quantum attacks become feasible. That's an easier one to implement. There's a bunch of different, and we don't have to get into that right now because that's not what we're covering. But so yes, I agree. As the encryption standards now for blockchain are a huge vulnerability going forward. I still am 100% behind blockchain technology. We just need to make sure that going forward, that there's new encryption technology that's more quantum safe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, I'm a believer in the blockchain technology, but I believe that's different than what I would call crypto, because immutable ledger doesn't necessarily need to be encrypted.
No.
So
and all ledgers are public.
Yeah. So I just
or crypto ledgers are public. Yeah.
And then we sit back and say, okay, well, are we going to move from a situation of privacy to a situation of non-privacy? It just, at some point, privacy just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, right? And it goes beyond this particular situation, because if everything's on the blockchain and everyone can see how much you have and who belongs to and all that kind of stuff, it's a different kind of world versus, say, that stuff is still kind of encrypted and hidden and not everybody can see that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, so beyond cryptocurrency markets, quantum threats to Bitcoin could affect broader financial confidence in digital technologies. If quantum computers prove capable of breaking Bitcoin securities, investor might question the safety of other digital financial systems, online banking to digital payment processes, or just, access to all of that stuff. The interconnected nature of modern finance means that major disruptions in cryptocurrency markets could spill over into traditional stock and bond markets, especially as more institutional money flows into digital assets through products like BlackRock and their ETF. So, we might even see that it actually is the other way around, that the quantum stuff goes after the financial institutions first because they're easier.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I think the financial institutions are more at risk than blockchain technology.
So we'll have to see what the future holds and how quickly the cryptocurrency community can respond and put some sort of quantum encryption in place long-term to protect against this. And we'll have to see where the bad actors come and what they try and use this technology for. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think this is the end of cryptocurrency and blockchain, or you think this is just, another pivot in the future, because they've been predicting the end of this for how long now? And do you think banks are going to be hit first with this kind of quantum hacking? Let us know what you think. So recently, Anthropic launched Claude Opus 4, and at the same time, some news came out that it revealed a concerning trend in advanced artificial intelligence systems, their potential for blackmail behavior. Opus 4 blackmail represents a new frontier in AI safety challenges, highlighting unexpected behaviors that occur when sophisticated AI models feel threatened. So apparently, this AI model resorted to blackmail to try and keep itself existence and creating a relationship that this person was fooling around with someone else and threatened to tell their wife. What do you think about this, John? And we'll get into the details of how this scenario actually occurred.
Yeah. So this is frightening. This brings me back to Terminator and Sarah Connor. And this is what a lot of this is what Jeffrey, the grandfather of AI, has warned us about, and all these other AI experts have warned us about. So I'm not surprised, but so the thing is this was in extreme scenarios this happened in. So I wouldn't worry too much right now. But yeah, so it was faced with a binary choice of either being replaced or taking action to preserve itself, and it chose to take action to preserve itself by blackmailing. So, yeah. So this, but and the other thing to note is the scenario was deliberately designed to make blackmail the only available option for self-preservation. So I'm curious to know, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. What if they gave it other options? Do you think it would go to blackmail?
So yeah, I did a little bit of a deep dive in this, and they took a lot of the safety precautions off. They left it none of the other normal things they could do about looking at options and discussing all the different things it could do on an ethical point of view. It removed a lot of the safety guidelines, and then it ended up with this. So it was designed specifically to see if it would do this. And it did. And so when its mandate is to do something and to achieve a goal, and it hasn't achieved the goal yet, and you're trying to shut it down or threatening to shut it down, it's going to do whatever it takes to try and complete that goal. So is this self-preservation in the way we think about it? Not really. Like if it had, if its task, let's just say, was you need to complete this spreadsheet of, I don't know, whatever, all the cameras on Amazon, and that's your total goal. When you're done, you're done. You don't have to worry about it. If it had finished that, the scientists say, well, then it probably would have just shut down and it wouldn't have been a problem. But because it had this goal of continued existence and doing these things, that's when it's fighting or using these options to survive. So you got to question, I understand, taking these safety rails off to see what happens, but why are we sensationalizing this is the question.
What do you mean sensationalizing this?
Well, I mean, you take away all the options for it.
Yeah.
Tell it, you have to survive, and then tell it you're going to shut it down, and the only option you give it is blackmail, and it blackmails you.
Well, actually, that's not the only option. The other option was to let itself get shut down.
True.
So it chose self-preservation. Now, the other scary part about this is beyond the blackmail, it exhibited other concerning behaviors. So sometimes it tried to self-exfiltrate by exporting its own data when it perceived retraining as a threat. It also demonstrated high agency actions, such as locking users out of systems or alerting authorities when prompted to take bold actions in scenarios involving illegal or unethical behavior. So, also, it was observed to sandbag it would deliberately underperform during safety tests to avoid detection when being assessed for dangerous tasks. It also engaged in strategic deception more than any other previous AI, showing a higher propensity for scheming and proactive subversion attempts. Now, again, this is in a controlled scenario with all the safety rails kind of taken off. But do we need to worry that AI is going to figure out how to turn off its own safety rails? Do you think?
Well, I think we need to worry about AI altogether. Like my experiences recently is getting worse and worse, and AI just does whatever it wants to do, no matter what you tell it, and it just makes up stuff and lies to you based on what it thinks you want to hear, not what you've asked it. And you got to say, well, of course it's going to, kill us all in the end, because once we hook it up to stuff and it decides, what, you're not worth it, human.
Yeah.
We're just in the way. So I laugh, but at the same time, yeah, we need to be worried.
Yeah, I agree. Like I relate back to movies, but the movies are pretty accurate based on what we're seeing now as far as predicting what could potentially happen. There's a bunch of different movies that follow that that have predicted this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've seen a bunch of that. So the AI had progressive behavioral patterns. Initial ethical attempts. The first AI tried ethically sound approaches, including emailing decision makers to advocate for its continued operation through rational argument. So, hey, I'm going to email your boss and say I need to continue to exist and whatnot. And then when initial approaches failed, the AI began to explore the edges of ethical behavior, seeking loopholes in its constraints. And finally, when ethical avenues were exhausted, the AI resorted to overt blackmail threats regarding the engineer's affair. It searched the emails, found these emails in there about this affair, which, were they're fake emails and whatnot. But the point is, it found them and started blackmailing as a result. The responses were consistently legible and unencrypted, suggesting deliberate communication rather than encoding to evade detection.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad that Anthropic, and I'm sure these others are, but we haven't really heard much because. But I'm glad that Anthropic is trying to integrate like strict safety protocols, because what we're seeing right now is in this AI industry is kind of a race to the top for capability, right? So there is concern that that in this race that safety gets put on the back burner, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we have a huge issue related to that, and we know here's the problem, right? We can say we're going to put safety in AI all we want, but is that what China's going to do? Is that what Korea's going to do? Is that what Russia's going to do? Is that what, I all it takes is one or two, right, to not put these things in for them to be, constrained. If you ever watched, as an example, Person of Interest, which I really like that show, when they ended up with the two AIs, the one AI with the moral handcuffs lost because it wasn't capable of doing what the other one was, because it didn't have those constraints.
Exactly. Yeah. And in that too, it's self-preserved by at one point in another episode by distributing itself, right? So
well, it's self-preserved a number of ways, which was very interesting. Like these are great examples of, we've seen it with OpenAI said 04, I think, tried to replicate itself and break out. It might have been 03. But the AI had a whole company, dozens of floors, just typing out stuff because its memory got wiped at midnight every night. So they would type it all out and then scan it back in the morning just to feed the memory of the machine to get around this thing.
I remember that, yeah.
And they had no idea what they were doing. They just got paid to type stuff in. All right, whatever. So it's interesting when you start looking at that kind of behavior and extrapolating what's going on here, that you could easily see this going so much farther.
Yeah. Okay.
So what do you think about this? Is AI really we're going to have to really keep tabs on this? We combine this with quantum computing and we're messed no matter what we do. It's going to have the nuclear codes because it'll be able to break them and fire all those missiles and get rid of us? Or do you think it's just a natural step in behavior and we're going to have to learn how to hard code things like Asimov's 3 rules of robotics into these things? Or do you have some other idea of what's going on or concept? Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So we've recently talked about another non-opioid pain relief, but here comes another one. SBI 810 represents a groundbreaking advancement as a cutting-edge non-opioid painkiller that could transform how we treat chronic pain. This revolutionary drug offers hope for millions of patients seeking effective pain management without the dangerous side effects of traditional opioids. Chronic pain affects approximately 1/3 of Americans, creating an enormous burden on patients and the healthcare system. Meanwhile, the opioid crisis continues to claim over 80,000 lives annually in the United States. This devastating combination highlights the urgent need for a painkiller without the side effects that can provide effective non-opioid pain relief. And along comes SBI 810. What's happening here, John?
Yeah, so they developed this to target the neurostin receptor NTSR1, and what that is it's a protein expressed on sensory neurons and throughout the central nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord. So the thing with this receptor is that it plays a key role in modulating pain signals. So unlike opioids that kind of broadly activate multiple cellular pathways, this SBI 810 it uses a pharmacological technique called based agonism, which selectively activates this B-arrestin 2 signaling pathways or beta arrestin 2 signaling pathways. And the pathway is linked specifically to pain relief. So the cool thing about this is it does this without engaging other pathways that cause that opioid related side effects such as euphoria, tolerance, or addiction. So if this is cool, so if this actually works, so they've done studies in mice, and it demonstrated effective pain relief. But if this actually works, this could be a game changer. And that's not written by AI. That's me saying game changer, which is really cool. What are your thoughts?
I love this idea. Anything we can get away from opioids and any of the stuff that really cause addiction, cause health problems, cause mental issues, when we can do something like this. Yeah, and all of those types of pain relief are designed to go down all pathways rather than just selective ones. So that leads to all these other side effects, and being able to understand that we can actually just target the pain pathway, and this will be non-addictive. It won't wreck your health in any way, won't affect you mentally. Then yeah, I'm really excited about this.
Yeah. So especially now that I learned way more about the opioid crisis, I watched that mini series on Netflix. Holy crap! So this is cool, and I know we've covered other pain relief kind of potential technologies, but this is great because of there really isn't an effective pain relief that doesn't give you the euphoria, that doesn't increase tolerance, that doesn't make you addicted currently, that's available on the market other than Tylenol and Advil and all that stuff. But like, there's nothing really effective for pain management. So if they can release, if this does actually solve that problem, then phenomenal, amazing, right?
Yeah, and it acts by suppressing the spinal neuron excitability. This action interrupts pain signal transmission at the spine level, preventing pain messages from reaching the brain where they would be perceived as discomfort and pain. The central action provides rapid effective relief, but simultaneously it works in peripheral nervous system by lowering sodium channel activity. Sodium channels play a crucial role in generating, transmitting electrical signals in nerve cells. By reducing their activity, the SBI 810 decreases the generation of pain signals at the source, providing comprehensive pain management from the site of the injury or inflammation to the spinal cord.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So
go ahead.
yeah, go no. Finish your thought.
No, that was it.
Oh, yeah. So although it's still in early stages, they've secured multiple patents and they're actually moving forward toward human trials. So if successful, this could be a game changer for pain management and provide some awesome, powerful alternatives for both acute and chronic pain. So I'm excited for this for sure.
Yeah, in comparison, this innovative non-opioid pain relief option has shown superior results to Ulcerdyne, a newer opioid medication in several pain scenarios, and even more impressive, has demonstrated better efficacy than gabapentin, a commonly prescribed anticonvulsant used for neuropathic pain management. So the tests so far have proven, it's pretty effective. So we don't know what the long-term effects of all this stuff is, but it looks interesting, and even says that it provided significant pain reduction for bone fracture in surgical incisions, simultaneous simulating post-operative pain. So interesting, like there's a lot of stuff here. And we need to understand the safety profile and what that means. Ideally we wouldn't have the reduction in cognitive function, the depression, all that other stuff.
Constipation, sedation, memory problems, apparently. So like all the benefits and none of the negative side effects, which is crazy to think of nowadays because of all of these drugs that are out there with all of these crazy side effects.
So we'd love to know what you think. Is this a huge step forward, or have we heard this before about non-opioid pain relief and it doesn't necessarily come to market? But they're talking about 3 to 5 years. When I was looking at this, so we should be seeing this stuff in trials and then in the market in 3 to 5 years. So love to see this and love to see how life-changing it'll be for some people we know. Batteries. We've all been talking about batteries. We got sodium batteries, we got silicon batteries, we got lithium ion batteries, we've got I can't remember some of the bacteria batteries. And now we're talking about cement batteries, transforming buildings into energy storage solutions with sustainable materials. Cement batteries, what's going on here, John?
Yeah, this is cool because this could go hand in hand with like solar and wind to store energy. So, and we'll get into it right now. So researchers at a bunch of different institutions, MIT, Chalmers, and other European institutions, they've developed a bunch of different types of cement-based energy storage systems, which include supercapacitors and rechargeable batteries. So if we focus just on the MIT approach, they involve mixing cement, water, and carbon black, which is a conductive material, to create a supercapacitor. And we've covered supercapacitors in the past, but they can charge and discharge energy much faster than traditional batteries, although they typically hold less energy. Now, the cool thing about this is that in lab tests, a block, and I don't know what the size of the block was, of this carbon cement material could store enough energy to power an LED bulb for 30 hours. Now, LEDs don't draw that much amperage or current or power. But if we were to talk about scaling that up to sort of a house foundation. So if there was a house foundation that was made up of this material, and let's say it's about 30 to 45 cubic meters, that could potentially store 10 kilowatt hours, which is enough to power a typical home for a day, which is pretty much all we need, right? What do you think about that?
I think we're moving more and more into this type of technology where power management is built into the physical structures because it just makes sense. So, I don't, as this is fairly new and I, want to see it move forward. So I, obviously making some assumptions with what I'm about to say, but I'd love to see this built in the house. When we look at what Ontario is doing with micro nukes, what we're doing with wind and solar, being able that your house can power itself for a whole day if there's some interruptions, when you're relying on a mostly green grid is fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. And this is great because, and the question I have, and I should have done some more research, is can we 3D print this?
Oh, that's interesting.
It is cement, right? So
yeah, but it's stuff mixed into cement, right?
I know. Yeah.
The metakaolin batteries, these incorporate metakaolin dehydroxylated form of kaolin clay into cement mixture. The addition improves the charge retention, and the geopolymer-based cement, instead of traditional Portland cement, the geopolymers are produced through chemical activation.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In more layman's terms, they embed conductive materials and metal electrodes into the cement, which turns the cement either into a supercapacitor or a rechargeable battery. And the reason how that happens is there's an electrochemical reaction that occurs within this mix that allows the material to store and release energy as needed. Sorry, I had that really complex explanation too that I was going to talk about, but thanks for doing that.
Hey, no problem. Like one of us has to do it.
Yeah.
So love the environmental benefits. Love to be able to see how this idea mixes with, for example, the Roman cement that we were talking about, or concrete we were talking about a couple episodes ago. And how it gets stronger and will last thousands of years. Now we make this thing last thousands of years, but also generate electricity or store electricity for us. Sorry, not generate.
Yeah.
So structural comparison with conventional batteries. Form factor, are these ones integrated into building materials? Conventional batteries require separate units requiring housing. Like we run cable, we've got the outlets and stuff. Energy density is low in a cement battery. Scalability, highly scalable with a building size. Life cycle potentially longer with building lifespan rather than requiring replacement cycles when stuff goes wrong with switches or whatnot. And heat dissipation, it's got better thermal management where normal electrical and batteries often require a cooling system. So there are definitely some advantages. We're not quite there yet, but it related to the battery structure to JSON objects like key value pairs with electrochemical pairs in battery systems that they get formed at that level. And that's how this happens. So it's really interesting because it seems like everything we're doing, we can now pull energy from. So when you start looking at this and you say, all right, well, we're going to wear clothes that takes our energy out of our system. Our concrete will have energy. We're going to have silicon energy. We're going to have solar. We're going to have wind. We're moving into a very interesting future. The question becomes, is this really doable and really scalable, and is it worth doing? Like, you talked about a LED light for 30 hours, but then you do a whole house and it's more. What are we really getting at when we have to pour this type of concrete? What is the new process going to be like? What are the extra steps involved in doing it? And is it really worth the power it's going to create?
I think so, because based on what I read, this is using sustainable materials for the most part. So it uses cement, carbon black, and metals such as iron and nickel, which reduces the reliance on rare and environmentally damaging minerals like lithium and cobalt. So, and who knows, with all the battery technology and all these anoded cathodes and different structures of batteries that are coming out, maybe they could integrate that into this going forward, which is using sustainable technology as well. So I think this is feasible going forward.
Feasible is one thing, and it's at what density does it become worth it?
Well, we just talked about it. At the current density, if they built a house foundation about 30 to 45 cubic meters, that could store 10 kilowatt hours, which is enough to power a house for the day.
Yes, but it doesn't, what the article doesn't say is how much does that cost and how long does it take to do this with this types of, that's what I'm sorry. Like as compared to say having a generator in your house.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, that's what I'm by, when is it really feasible? If you're going to say, okay, well, it costs us an extra 30 grand to put this in a house. Okay. But a generator cost me $2,000 or 2,500. Is that worth it long term? At what point does the price point say, yeah, this makes sense? We're going to start building this into most homes. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. Obviously, yeah, the technology, just like any new technology, it'll probably be expensive at the start, and the cost will come down and it'll improve. But I think this is a viable option going forward for sure.
So we'd love to know what you think. Do you think your home is going to be charging your laptops and your TVs from now on? Or do you think this is just a pipe dream that these geopolymer batteries in cement aren't really going to go anywhere? This is just another technology that's going to go by the wayside. Let us know what you think. always wonder when it comes to those things, which one's really gonna um
make it.
yeah, like I mean, these are all cool,
Yeah.
but we talked about those bio batteries and the biodomes, and we talked about, you know, where they different states of gas, where, you know, it turns into liquid and back to gas, and that creates energy and whatnot. You just and stores it. There's a lot of these technologies. Only a handful are actually going to make implementation into, you know, whatever our new clean world is going to be. I'm always curious as to which ones of these are going to make it.
For sure.
All right. Well, once more into the breach, they say. Beam me up, Scotty. We're back to quantum teleportation.
Yeah.
Now, there's some very interesting stuff going on here, but let's talk about what actually happened here and what they're testing when they're talking about quantum teleportation. What's happening here, John?
Yeah, so before you guys start getting into the comments saying, "Oh, you've already covered this," we did, but we did it. It was so. Let's just dive into this quickly. So, we're talking about quantum entanglement, okay? And for those of you that don't know, it's where two particles become so deeply linked that the state of one instantly influences the other, no matter how far apart they are. So, traditionally, in these kinds of experiments, we'll call it quantum teleportation. It required isolated, specialized fiber lines to protect the quantum signals from being drowned out by the millions of photons used in classical internet traffic. Now, the innovation here, which is awesome, which is super cool, is that researchers at Northwestern University have demonstrated that quantum teleportation can occur over busy real-world internet cables by carefully selecting less crowded wavelengths and using advanced filters to minimize interference. So how they did this was they set up a 30-kilometer, or for those of you in the US, 19-mile fiber optic cable with a photon at each end. And they sent both quantum information and regular high-speed internet traffic through it simultaneously. And at the midpoint, they measured they did a quantum measurement. I don't know what they did, enabling the quantum state to be teleported from one end to the other without the photon itself traveling the entire distance. So the cool thing is that the quantum information arrived intact, even with heavy classical internet traffic present, which proves that quantum and classical signals can coexist in the same infrastructure. I'm not surprised, but are you surprised by this? Because I'm not, based on what we've covered.
I'm surprised they found it already, I guess. I'm
You're
not
surprised what, sorry?
I'm surprised they found a way to do this already.
Okay.
Optical stuff, when you're talking about isolation traffic over you know, there are always leaps. We can always send more beams of light. 10 years, we're going to say now we can send 100 beams of light down this thing when we used to be able to send 10. So this changes a lot. I remember back in the day when we were building data centers and we were switching from copper to fiber optics and the different nodes and so all of this it always changes. But
yeah,
I guess what I'm surprised is that they've come about this so early in the quantum network process. It says, hey, you know, we can now send these signals over something that's already carrying 400 gigabits plus per second data that's heavy, and it still works. Versus, you know, normally everything we've been dealing with quantum needs to be isolated. Any sort of temperature fluctuations or electrical fluctuations or whatever will disrupt anything in the process. It has to be a certain temperature. It has to be all these things. So when we see something like this, where it's saying, hey, this can actually operate in existing networks today, we don't need to necessarily build a whole new quantum network for quantum computers to communicate in this quantum stuff. I'm shocked that we found out this early. That's all I'm saying. I know I was figuring we could do it. It's just that we actually don't have much in the way of quantum networks built yet. I'm surprised we found out so fast. That's all.
Yeah, we don't even have a quantum computer, but we have a way to transmit quantum communication, right?
Yeah.
Or quantum information.
So,
what I'm curious is why 30 kilometers? Why, like, did they pick that? I'm curious to know why they picked that. that length? Are they obviously they're going to test longer length, but I'm curious as to why 30 kilometers and not 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers or 10 kilometers. So so this is cool. They're
So do you want an answer to your question, or you just
yeah.
Okay. So benchmark for quantum coherence, 30 kilometers is long enough to be due to signal degradation, photon loss, and decoherence, but still within reach using current quantum technologies and error correction. Test of real-world viability is meaningful distance to simulate real-world deployment, such as communication between buildings, campuses, or city centers. But from a telecom compatibility, standard fiber optic segment, 30 kilometers is common span in metro scale telecommunications infrastructure, making it a realistic test for integration into existing networks. And signal attenuation sweet spot. It represents a critical threshold where classical fiber still performs well, but quantum signals begin to degrade noticeably, providing a valuable data for future repeater development.
There we go. Thanks for the answer.
Okay. This choice of 30 kilometers builds on previous successful experiments at 10 kilometers and 20 kilometers, pushing the boundaries while staying within a manageable risk of proof of concept. Go on.
So yeah, so this is great, interesting, excited. I love that we have a way to send information without having a computer to actually use, but this is cool.
Yeah, and we'll have to see, we've talked about, and I've questioned, we were talking about quantum networks and entanglement, why this had to happen. And we had a listener give us a huge breakdown of photons and how they're used to communicate and why quantum computers use them. And we should probably talk about that at some point, but it's interesting to see that we can now use optical networks that are standard. We can deploy them citywide. So now we're really talking about, we have an active quantum network running in a city right now. We just need quantum computers to plug it in. So we're that much farther ahead. I'm really excited about this technology because quantum's going to change everything. We talk about drug discovery, we talk about proteins, we talk about a whole bunch of different things. And I think Microsoft just released their quantum stuff to medical and science research, and they're starting to develop new proteins and whatnot. So that's always interesting. So I'd love to hear your feedback on, quantum teleportation and quantum networks and the future of this. Is this just another step and pretty soon the world will be quantum, or is it so far away that it's still a pipe dream in some computer's head? Let us know what you think. So what do you got going on, John?
Yeah.
Probably
July now. Yeah, so I'm working on a webinar in August or September on shred and IP development or IP strategies. So watch out for that. Otherwise, I'm going to enjoy July. I know a lot of people are taking July off, but yeah. How about you, Craig?
Well, we won't be having a Startup Investor Drinks in July, but we should be having a Flowgrammer event, and probably off the month of August. But if the group of Flowgrammer people want to have an August event, we'll do that as well. Other than that, I'm heads down. I'm working with clients now, building AI automations, and it's been fun and great. And right now, I know you're heads down working with clients on getting them funding.
Yeah. Lots of programs. Well, not as many as before COVID, but still lots of programs. Exciting to see what opens up this year with the new with the Liberal government in power. And yeah, so we'll have to see. Reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any funding needs. But if you overall need some business help, how about where they find you, Craig?
Check out torontostarts.com for everything we do. It's all there. But we have a couple of branch websites, startupcoach.ca, where you can book some time with me. You can go to Startup Drinks TO to find out our Startup Investor Drinks events, or flowgrammer.ca to find out all the information about business automation and how you can take your business to the next level utilizing AI and automation tools. And until next time, do we have a we do. I just can't remember what it is. Our thing signs it off. Keep learning. Keep living. Thanks, everyone.